You're tuned into Tour Talk TV with your host, Mark Anthony.
All right, we are live. This is Mark Anthony, TourTalk.tv. On the other side of this conversation, we have our guest for our second Google Hangout, Katrina Parks. She is a TV producer, reality documentary.
Yeah, documentarian's good these days.
Tell us about your background.
Well, it's been an interesting journey. I guess I started out and first found out about the Harvey Girls while I was studying painting and drawing at the University of New Mexico. And while I was a student, I worked for the artist Judy Chicago in a small railroad town called Belen, New Mexico. And Belen has a Harvey House museum. And so one day after work we went there, and that's when I was first introduced to this important history, how over 100,000 women had moved west to work as railroad station waitresses. And I was, of course, really intrigued, and I said at the time, someone should make a documentary film about these women, not necessarily thinking it would be me, but as the years passed, I became a filmmaker. I worked for several other documentary filmmakers, and this project kind of kept stewing in my mind, and so finally I decided to take it on. And over the years I would learn about these Harvey Girl reunions and events that were taking place, and I would show up with a very small crew, and we would film these important oral histories, which you can see in the film.
What did you do previous to this? What are some of your career highlights, I guess?
That's a good question. Let's see. Well, I started off, I went to graduate school at San Francisco State University, and while I was there, I co-founded a nonprofit with two of my other classmates called Cinefem, and Cinefem supports women screenwriters and directors, and we launched the nonprofit with a very wonderful event called EcoFem, which had ecofeminist films from around the world, and we premiered it in the Bay Area at Bravo Center for Women in the Arts. So I'm still involved with the organization, and we continue to do events. And other than that, commercially, I've done many different types of programs. One series that I worked on, a historical series, was called Cities of the Underworld, and that was a wonderful series with Don Wildman for History Channel. So that was certainly a highlight. I've done other series for Food Network, for many networks. So it's been a great journey.
Okay, so you've been kind of festering this Harvey Girls thing. You've been in New Mexico. You've met them all. What finally tripped the trigger and you said, I'm going to make this?
Well, from the first, I guess when I started graduate school, I thought it would be a good idea to go into graduate school with a project in mind, because I knew that film school can be a very long process for some, and so I thought, well, this project will, give me focus and help direct me. And so I decided to test the waters by filming some interviews right before I started film school in Belen. And I just wanted to see, would there be enough Harvey Girls left to interview who I thought would be good subjects? Would they be interesting enough? And that first film shoot, I mean, those interviews are in the film, and I found that, yes, I mean, there were lots of interesting aspects of their experience that I hadn't read before. And so I thought, oh, well, yeah, definitely. I could see that the film had legs after that first interview.
Okay, so there we go. Okay. So you basically were, so it was kind of bubbling on the surface there. You have met the women. What did you think of their stories?
Well, I was captivated. I mean, as much by their stories as their personalities, that really came through in the interviews. I mean, they would arrive, to film with me just dressed to the nines, and each woman had a distinct style. And I was also, really excited by the idea that many of them had used this experience to, in some cases, particularly with the Harvey girls who worked in later years, they had gone on to do other things. They had launched businesses. One of them had become a jewelry maker, for example, as a result of her time as a Harvey girl. Another woman, Dorothy Bowe, had made a career for herself in food service. So I found that interesting, that the Harvey Girl experience was a launch pad for them to do other things, but it still, I guess, remained part of their identity that they felt very strongly about. My husband describes it as, a sorority almost. It just was a very important part of who they were or are as people.
Okay, for those that'll be watching this at a later time, what was a Harvey Girl and how did they become a Harvey Girl?
The Harvey Girls were one of the first all-female workforces. Starting in the 1880s, the Fred Harvey Company hired women to work as railroad station waitresses, essentially, at eating houses along the Atchison, Topeka, Santa Fe Railroad. And early on, they started recruiting women from the East and Midwest to work as Harvey Girls. And later on, the company changed their policies a bit and then started in the 30s and 40s hiring local women to be Harvey Girls as well. But the application process, there was a woman named Alice Steele who was kind of the head of human resources for the Fred Harvey Company. So that was very unusual to have a woman executive at the time. And she did interviews with women in Kansas City. She didn't like to hire women who had been waitresses before because she thought they had too many bad habits and wouldn't be able to follow the strict guidelines of the Fred Harvey Company. So that was a no-no. You wouldn't mention that if you did have that experience. And and you couldn't chew gum, nail polish. All those things were frowned upon.
Well, it's fun because I do tours out on the West Coast here, and the Harvey House, the Fred Harvey Corporation, the Southwest, a lot of the parks around here. And I like to tell the story of the Harvey Girls because, in the era that this started, women didn't have those rights. They didn't have those privileges. And then along comes a company that says, hey, come out west. We're going to give you a job. We're going to teach you how to be basically, the proper lady. Mm-hmm. And we're going to give you these freedoms that were unheard of back then. And, oh, by the way, your boss is also going to be a female. And it's just so funny because I get this huge reaction from all of the women going, yay!
I think women, the Harvey Girl story, just as it resonated with me, it really draws a wide audience, draws people in. I think it's also, it's part of kind of a nostalgia that a lot of us have for the West and how things have changed.
How long were you planning to do this, and how long did it take you to actually accomplish the DVD?
Well, I remember, so once I actually went to graduate school, my plans for making the film kind of went on the back burner, and it wasn't until, I think, I can't put a year on it, but after finishing graduate school, when I was working for a documentary film company in San Francisco, I remember thinking, oh, I'll have this project wrapped up in a year or two. It's going to be really easy to fundraise for, and I could really see it coming together quickly. And of course, that it wasn't easy to fundraise for, and it took a lot of time. And it's hard to put an actual number of years on it. What I will say is that the documentary was completed in 2013. And it's been wonderful because, and this was not something I had planned, but there has been a real awakening, resurgence of interest in the Harvey Girls and Fred Harvey that kind of started with Stephen Fried's wonderful book, Appetite for America. And Stephen is interviewed in the documentary. And as a result of the book, and then news about the film coming out, I think they've helped to catalyze a stronger interest in Fred Harvey. And so we had some museum exhibits starting to be in the works, which began with an exhibit at the National Archives in Kansas City in 2013 on Fred Harvey, and that was obviously the perfect place to premiere the documentary. So all of that happened kind of synchronistically, and so, you know, at the end of the day, it's been a really wonderful thing that the film was finished when it did, because it could then play a significant role in these events.
What was it like? You know, I mean, the Harvey Girls stopped basically in the 1960s, but to meet these women, to meet their families, and you know, learn, like you said, that this was a launching pad for something bigger and better. And yet, you know, these women, when they were Harvey Girls, they were something special in their little community. You know, what was that like?
Well, I think really they kept me going over the years too, because, you know, there were frustrations in terms of the whole fundraising for this women's history documentary, but, you know, I really felt like I invested a lot in my relationship with them, and really loved hanging out with them and loved meeting their families, and they were so welcoming and so sharing of things like their archival materials, that, you know, I really felt like I owed it to them to keep going and to finish the project. So, you know, that's pretty much the most wonderful thing about making the documentary has been spending time with them and their families, and seeing how much the film means to them too, and to their families.
Cool. Okay, so now, you know, you and Stephen and just the Fred Harvey movement kind of collided together at the same time here. Everything started to go into that direction. So now you're doing the documentary presentations. Is there anything about the audience comments afterwards that have surprised you, that, you know, that wasn't expected?
I think, you know, in some ways, it's the enthusiasm of the audience has been. I mean, of course, one always hopes that your work will be well received, but we had an event in Albuquerque at the Chemo Theater, and that was organized by a woman named Carolyn Meyer, who has a wonderful young adult book about the Harvey Girls coming out this spring. And anyway, there were over I think 650 people who showed up for the screening in Albuquerque. And, you know, that kind of, we don't have a publicist, and so that kind of groundswell of interest in the Harvey Girls and Fred Harvey is just a wonderful thing. And I think it has, even though we are obviously a force behind it, it has been a very pleasant, wonderful surprise to see people embrace it like this.
Are you going to like with Stephen, he's kind of keeping his toe in the Harvey waters. Are you basically doing the exact same thing, just kind of watching this all grow? Yeah,
I guess you could describe it like that. I mean, of course, for both of us doing these events, and it's a lot of fun, and it continues to be very rewarding. So we love to do it.
Okay, so now, once you got this done, how did PBS get involved?
I approached them. I had always imagined that PBS seemed like the perfect fit for the film, and it's actually been made available to PBS through American Public Television. So over a dozen stations across the country picked up the film for broadcast, and that's been wonderful. Some of the bigger cities picked it up: New York, San Francisco, Phoenix, Albuquerque. So it's wonderful to really see the reach of the film getting out there.
Okay, so now that it's out there, everything's going along here. What's next for you?
I have other documentary projects in the works that I'm excited about. So those are coming up, and I'll be putting some information about them on. I have a website, assertionfilms.com. I recently got a small grant to do a trailer for a longer documentary that I'm working on.
Did the Harvey Girls open up some new doors, or did it in any way kind of shove you into a different direction than what you were previously going into?
Well, certainly, in some ways, I've always been working in this trajectory. I mean, I've been working in documentary and in some reality television for, over a decade. So, I guess, but overall, what I've taken from the experience is, the possibility that, of course, it's been very exciting to see the film finished, and I can see the impact it's made on people's lives. So it's opened me up, I guess, to, now with distribution, different distribution channels, it's very possible for your film to get out there, and there are just all of these different platforms. And so it's made me more open to that kind of thing. I think like having a very strong relationship with your audience in your community, in a way, as a filmmaker, it makes you you can easily do some of the distribution work yourself. And so that means that if a broadcaster isn't interested in your film, or it's not a mainstream topic, that doesn't mean that you can't make it and it can't be profitable. So it's kind of opened me up to that more probably than I would have been previously.
Okay. With the Harvey Girls, what was your biggest struggle in getting this made? Was it finding the girls, finding the stories, the travel, what?
No, those elements were surprisingly easy. But especially in the Southwest, there are some very strong historical groups and groups of Harvey Girls who would get together. Now, if someone were to approach the project now, many of the women who I interviewed, sadly have passed away, so there aren't as many Harvey Girls left. But at the time that I was filming the interviews, there still were these strong kind of gatherings and groups of Harvey Girls, and so that part, connecting to them, was surprisingly easy, and it really was the fundraising aspect of it that was challenging, as it is for all documentary filmmakers, I think.
Do you think with the advent of the internet, it's easier for you to get your work out there and to make your profit, to make your money?
Yeah, certainly. As I was saying, there are all these different distribution channels now. You can purchase the film through Vimeo if you're interested in streaming it. And then we also sell DVDs of the film through our website, which is harveygirlsdocumentary.com. So yeah, all of that has been made much more easy by the internet.
Okay, last, I guess, a question. What are meeting these women, hearing their stories, knowing where the Harvey Girls came from, what I guess can say, what impacted you the most in the whole project?
Well, I was really, I think, touched by the impact that being a Harvey Girl had on some of the women's lives. And one of the Harvey Girls in the film that immediately comes to mind is Hilda Velarde Salas, and she worked at the Alvarado Hotel in Albuquerque starting in the late 30s and then through World War II. But being a Harvey Girl, she saved her tip money, and so after the war, when she moved to California, she was able to make a down payment on a house. So that kind of, I guess that obviously had a huge impact on her and her family. There were other women who worked at the airport in later years who supported, they were single moms and supported families with many large families, 3 to 4 kids. So that was very, I think, surprising and eye-opening that they were able to do that as a waitress.
Okay. My final comment to you is I do have to thank you for making the DVD. Okay, because again, when I go back out on tour and I got these people from all over the world, and I'm taking them to the Grand Canyon, and I'm showing them the structures up there built by Mary Jane Coulter, and I get into the whole Harvey Girls thing, or just Harvey houses, Fred Harvey, and then the girls. I get this huge response, and I get a lot of people, as they come off the bus or whatever, going, "Wow, that's amazing!" And they want to buy the DVD, so of course I give them your website and all, and all of that stuff. So, it's just when you say the impact, I think it goes back, it goes wider than just the Harvey Girls, because this is a story that needed to be told, And so for all the people that I've talked to that said, good, so, it's a fascinating story. It's a fascinating DVD. There it is again. The links will be up on the website. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I just want to thank you for your part in preserving this history, because it's really important and wonderful that you're leading these tours and to these amazing spots that are still standing, where people can really feel and be part of that history in a more living, I guess, way than goes beyond the DVD. That one of the points of making the film was also to show audiences that you can go here and still experience some of what it was like. So thank you for doing that.
All right. The links will be up on the website, markanthonytourtalk.tv. That's Katrina Parks, and have yourself a wonderful day.